We have to remember 15 years ago, she was caught in a sting operation trying to sell access to Andrew for £500,000.
Yeah, the fake
And, and
shake.
man, yeah, and managed to come back, went on Oprah, pretended to be a victim, and there she was back in the royal box at Wimbledon and at Ascot. But so I think this Houdini of the royal family, we may see her again, but you're absolutely right. That relationship, I think, has broken under the strain of what's been happening. I think also we'll see some fracturing with the relationship with the daughters. I think the daughters are going to try and distance themselves too. And we may even see them renouncing their titles.
The Times reveals in today's paper that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor finally agreed to leave his grace and favour residence Royal Lodge after it became clear his closest ally, his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, was deserting him. There are also reports that Andrew could be in line for a six-figure payout as compensation for leaving the lease of the Windsor mansion, but that could be reduced because of a huge repair bill at the property. Andrew Lownie joins us, author of Entitled, The Rise and Fall of the House of York. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
It's good to speak to you. Shall we start with the relationship between Andrew and Fergie, Sarah Ferguson, which has remained, I don't know how you would describe it, but somewhat intact while they've cohabited over these last number of decades. But she seems to have dipped at the removal of his title. He's no longer a prince and Fergie's out the door.
Yes, I mean, they describe themselves as the happiest divorced couple ever, but actually that was always a misnomer. They occupied the same house, but and she clearly liked being associated with him. But now he's no longer a prince and no longer in Royal Lodge. I think she's moved on, and as you say, she's trying to rebrand herself. I mean, she is the comeback kid. She's done it several times before. We have to remember 15 years ago she was caught in a sting operation trying to sell access to Andrew for £500,000.
Yeah, the fake
And,
shake.
and yeah, and managed to come back, went on Oprah, pretended to be a victim, and there she was back in the royal box at Wimbledon and at Ascot. But so I think this Houdini of the royal family, we may see her again, but you're absolutely right. That relationship, I think, has broken under the strain of what's been happening. I think also we'll see some fracturing with the relationship with the daughters. I think the daughters are going to try and distance themselves too. And we may even see them renouncing their titles.
Really? What makes you say that? Why would they renounce their titles?
Well, I mean, clearly it's very useful to them. Their business activities are based around being princesses, but I think they are trying to distance themselves from the family. I think they've been, certainly a lot of commentators are suggesting it would be wise for them to break off on their own, to establish themselves as separate entities away from the York family. I mean, this is now a very toxic brand.
And so would that be a formal removal of titles, or would that be something like we witnessed a couple of weeks ago with Andrew, whereby the titles would sort of be moved into the background, although officially they would still be princesses?
Well, I think they may do it voluntarily, but I think, talking about the future of the monarchy, I think there's a very good chance that when King William comes to the throne, he will dispense with all these titles except for active working royals, indeed, perhaps even people in the direct line of succession. And it will move much more to a sort of European style, much more slimmed down monarchy, much more focused on good works and slightly less on pomp.
And that is part of the contract with the public, isn't it? That the royal service, that the royal family should be for service. And actually, Andrew has broken that contract.
Yes, I mean, there's a trope in the royal family between public duty and private pleasure, and there is a group of them who, in a sense, have gone down the private pleasure route, the Princess Margaret, the Duke of Windsor, and Prince Andrew. And I think they're trying to get back to the public duty trope. As you say, or as Ed Owens, quoted in your program, said, I mean, they hold themselves up as a representative of the nation, as a representative of all the best values. And clearly, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson have disappointed there. I think the royal family realized last week that in order to command respect and trust, they needed to act very ruthlessly against the couple and distance themselves, particularly if charges were to be brought.
Yeah. I want to ask about some of the other elements that are now emerging about Andrew, his status now and his future. It's also reported that he may be in line for a £558,000 payout for Royal Lodge, although there is a huge repair bill. Now, it's our understanding that he'd spent quite a lot of money on maintaining Royal Lodge over these years. Can you help us understand what all of this means?
Yes, well, I mean, I don't think anyone understands his finances. I
Yes.
mean, he has put in £8.5 million on this repairing lease. He is entitled to this money back. I think he's actually being paid millions of pounds, basically, to vacate Royal Lodge, because he had this ironclad lease. I mean, it amazes me that he hasn't kept the property up to speed in terms of renovations, because he has plenty of money. But I think the pressure that was put on him to leave was that he would be paid quite large sums of money by King Charles, and the pressure on his daughters. Um, I've just said that they may renounce their titles, but I think what he hoped was that they would still remain within the royal family. They would still have a role there. They would still keep their titles. I think the pressure was put on him that they might have to suffer if he didn't really behave himself.
Yeah. Andrew, you've also been talking in the last 24 hours or so about further claims around Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's conduct, and actually you've suggested there he has no moral boundaries, that he was exploiting his role as trade envoy to line his pockets and chase women. Tell us more about what makes you say this, and how well sourced I suppose this is.
Well, it's based on 4 years' research, talking to 300 people. Everything in my book is footnoted, is often double sourced. I mean, in order to get through the lawyers, we had to do that. And I mean, I've got countless stories of Andrew requesting girls when he went on taxpayer-funded trips.
Do you mean women? Sorry, just to be clear on the ages that you're talking about.
Well, should we say young women? I mean, women. I mean, I have had requests of teenagers, which I've heard from people. So, I would say teenagers and young women. Yes.
Okay, and these are what? Are they prostitutes?
Well, some prostitutes have been provided for him. I have a story of 40 prostitutes being provided in Thailand, and certainly that was the case when he went to places like Kazakhstan. But also, what seems to have happened is people provided translators, secretaries, various people like that, on the expectation that their duties may go beyond their professional duties. But, we have plenty of instances of him using these trade trips, which were meant to promote British trade, to actually promote only his own business interests, but also those of business associates like David Rowland's. He took his daughters, for example, on some of these trips with all the attendant security costs. And so I've been calling for a parliamentary investigation into these trips as special trade envoy between 2001 and 2011. All the files, which should now be in the National Archives, have closed. The government have used every device possible to prevent those files being released under freedom of information. And I think that would be very useful to see who he was taking on these trips, who he was seeing, and what he was doing.
So as you've heard, Andrew's outlined there that this reporting is based on people he's spoken to, sources he has, and of course I should say in the grand picture of all that we talk about with Andrew, formerly Prince Andrew, that he denies any wrongdoing, particularly in relation to accusations made by the likes of Virginia Giuffre, etc. But these are further claims which, Andrew Lownie, these would, given that these were on trade trips, this would be on, first of all, on taxpayer money, I would suggest, at least part of it, although there's a suggestion that perhaps he would go on these trade trips and then bolt on some personal holiday time on the other end of them. But then also he'd presumably have been surrounded by members of the government, by diplomats and others.
Yes, I mean, these were paid for by the taxpayer. I mean, as you say, he would put in what's called private time, but we would in some ways pay for that travel. He was escorted by all sorts of people, and I have hope that, some of these protection officers, equerries, staff, but also diplomats and politicians who are well aware of his behavior will now come forward and talk. Many of them wouldn't talk to me. I would hope they would re-examine their conscience. And their higher duty to I suppose, public interest and talk. And this is why I think it's very important that there's a lot more detail that needs to come out about those trips.
Yeah. One other thing I just wanted to put to you, Andrew, because it's always fascinating speaking to you, is around the future for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And one of the thoughts I've had here is twofold, in fact, that he will be out with the protection of the firm, and within that he will also lose the restraint that perhaps the royal household may have placed on him in some ways to be less of a public figure, particularly over these last few years. I wonder if he will be able to resist schmoozing the press, schmoozing the tabloids, in a way that, in inverted commas, more conventional celebrities do, where they will perhaps arrange photo shoots and plant stories about themselves in the press. Is that the sort of character he is, that out with the restraint of the royal household, actually Andrew may attempt to promote himself in some ways into the media?
Well, I mean, I think the royal family do that anyway. It's done very subtly through a mixture of pressure and patronage. I think that role is more likely to be taken up by Sarah Ferguson now that she's sort of cut herself loose, and that's what she's done in the
Right.
past.
Yeah.
But Andrew, we saw when he did the Newsnight interview, that didn't go down very well. So I think it's very unlikely he'll take that path.
Yeah.
But I do think there is a real reputational risk to the monarchy now that stories about the royal family will begin to leak into the press, or there may be books based on material that may have come from the York family.
Yes. Andrew, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. Andrew Lownie there, author of Entitled, The Rise and Fall of the House of York.